This is CBN NewsWatch.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm George Thomas. The economy will be a major factor for voters in the presidential election. While there are signs it's starting to come back from the COVID shutdown, analysts say it could take years to fully recover. That's why many are watching the Federal Reserve Board today as it delivers its prediction for the next quarter. Caitlin Burke has that story.
All eyes are on the Federal Reserve Board, set to deliver their first economic forecast and policy proposals since late last year, before the pandemic caused an unprecedented economic shutdown, but on the heels of an encouraging jobs report that shows millions of Americans are going back to work.
We sure did get a blockbuster jobs report on Friday. There's no question about that. And boy, was that good news when we most needed it, given the havoc and chaos of the last 3 months. But we're not out of the woods yet.
The economy went into recession in February, ending more than 10 years of expansion. The Labor Department reports 11.5 million layoffs in March, then 7.7 million more in April. The Fed is expected to keep interest rates near zero as it works to usher along a recovery. But Heritage Foundation economist Stephen Moore says the speed in which the nation bounces back depends largely on state economies.
What matters most is getting these states open for businesses, because as we've seen in Florida and Texas and Tennessee and Georgia and so many of these red states with Republican governors, that once they open up their businesses, people come back to the stores, people come back to work, and revenue starts flowing again.
The Fed has already offered trillions in support to financial markets and worked with the Treasury on loans to small and medium-sized businesses. And while there's talk of another massive stimulus package, Republicans want to wait and see. President Trump is optimistic following the May rebound of 2.5 million jobs, tweeting, quote, "I built the greatest economy in the world, the best the U.S. has ever had. I'm doing it again." 2020 contender Joe Biden pushed back, writing, quote, "Trump squandered a growing economy."
Donald Trump has to convince the American people that he's got the American economy on the right track. And I think the big issue for the election in November 2020 is the answer to this question. Do you believe that Donald J. Trump or Joe Biden is ever better able to guide us back into prosperity?
While Biden leads Trump overall, registered voters believe the president is more equipped to oversee an economic recovery. According to a recent NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, 48% to 37% give Trump the advantage in handling the economy.
Currently, all 50 states are in some phase of reopening, but some are seeing an increase in coronavirus cases, which could lead officials to slow the pace of people getting back to work. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thank you, Caitlin. And on that subject of the virus, COVID cases are surging globally and fast approaching 2 million right here in the United States, with the death toll topping 111,000. As we mentioned, infections are still on the rise in at least 21 states, and hospitalizations are increasing in 8 states. Dr. Anthony Fauci said the virus is his worst nightmare and urges Americans to remain cautious as the country works to reopen.
What they need to know is that when you open, that doesn't mean that everything is okay and you can do whatever you want. You still have to practice a degree of caution and carefully go through the process of trying to normalize. That means you still should be wearing a mask. You still should be trying as best as possible to have that physical distancing. You still need to wash your hands as often as you possibly can and avoid congregation in large numbers. These things, even though you're trying appropriately, because we know everyone wants to approach normality and get things back to normal, including the economy. But that doesn't mean that all bets are off. And that's the reason why we say be careful and do it prudently.
In New Jersey, COVID-19 shutdowns sparked a federal religious liberty lawsuit against Governor Philip Murphy. The Thomas More Society has sued Governor Murphy on behalf of a Jewish rabbi and a Catholic priest whose religious rights were violated with the issuing of selective enforcement of New Jersey's COVID-19 stay-at-home orders. Attorney Christopher Ferreira joins us now with more. Christopher, great to have you on the show. So give us here real quickly a little more detail on what happened that led to this lawsuit in the first place.
Well, what we have going on in New Jersey is something that has never been seen in the history of that state or in the history of this country. We have a governor who is literally micromanaging the lives of millions of people with a series of executive orders that govern when they may leave home, where they may shop, what businesses may operate, what businesses may not operate, and also tightly regulating divine worship by strictly limiting the number of people who can be involved in in-person worship services. It is our position in this suit, given the developments of recent days, that the entire rationale for this regime of restrictions on millions of people collapsed when Governor Murphy not only endorsed but participated in mass marches in protest of the death of George Floyd, undoubtedly the victim of police brutality. Now, that's a worthy First Amendment cause. Thousands marched for it. And if thousands can march for it shoulder to shoulder with the governor participating, where is the threat of the virus, we ask? There is no threat that would warrant a continuation of this lockdown. Mm-hmm. The problem we see now is that we have a governor who is adjusting his executive orders to suit his value judgments and preferences of the moment. So when he was called out for having participated in mass gatherings, violating the rules that he lays down for millions of others, he issued an executive order, Executive Order 152, that suddenly declares that everyone now has First Amendment rights in the state of New Jersey, again, as far as outdoor gatherings go, provided the gatherings are for the purposes of political protest or religion.
Yeah,
we find that very curious.
Sure. Christopher, let me just ask you this. Where do things stand now with the easing of these restrictions, especially as the state enters phase 2?
Well, the way things stand now is that indoor worship services are still restricted unfairly and unjustifiably to 25% of the capacity of the room in which the service is conducted, or 50 persons, whichever is less. So theoretically, if you have a very small room, that would be one person representing 25% of the capacity. Or if you have a church that seats 1,000, you can only have 50 people in that church. Meanwhile, of course, businesses of all kinds, accounting firms, law firms, manufacturing facilities, favored retail businesses with staff in the facilities have no such restrictions. We're told now that indoor gatherings can only occur if they involve this magical number, this limited number of 50 persons. But what exactly distinguishes an indoor gathering from an office gathering of, say, accountants or lawyers? The scheme that this governor has imposed on the state of New Jersey makes less and less sense as the days go by. And we find that the situation has become simply intolerable. There's no more justification.
Mr. Ferreira, I'm going to have to leave it right there. We've run out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the broadcast. In other news, one day after the funeral for George Floyd, the conversation on Capitol Hill is centered around police reform. Both the House and Senate charting their own paths to get it done. The House Judiciary Committee held a hearing on police brutality 2.5 weeks after Floyd's death at the hands of Minneapolis police officers. The hearing comes after Democrats have introduced a major police reform bill. Floyd's brother, by the way, one of the 12 people testifying before Congress. And here's what he had to say.
I couldn't take care of George that day he was killed, but maybe by speaking with you today, I can make sure that his death will not be in vain. I'm here to ask you to make it stop. Stop the pain.
Meanwhile, cities across the country making their own changes. Los Angeles announcing major cuts to police funding. Seattle considering a 50% reduction. And New York State redirecting funds to youth programs. And moving a bill forward that would ban chokeholds. Tuesday's primary elections in the United States led to massive problems at polling places in several states. People waited for hours to vote in Georgia, as machine malfunctions and ballot shortages delayed the process. Another issue, absentee ballots that didn't arrive on time. Democrats blame the Republican Secretary of State who selected the new machines. Brad Raffensperger also encouraged registered voters to request an absentee ballot. Election officials fear this is merely a preview of potential problems in November's election. For more on this story and other political coverage, please tune into Faith Nation this evening. As always, you can watch it right here on the CBN News Channel. Remnants of Tropical Storm Cristobal are moving across parts of the Midwest, unleashing downpours and bringing gusty winds. Heavy rain hit Missouri this morning before sweeping across Illinois. High winds caused downed trees and knocked out electricity to nearly 20,000 customers in the windy city of Chicago. The National Weather Service says Cristobal may produce flash flooding and isolated river flooding as rains continue. Cristobal is now only the fourth tropical system to have tracked across Wisconsin in recent years.
Yeah, I can't believe this. This is something new for Wisconsin.
This is so rare never for the Midwest, but I said, you still want to keep our routine up? And she said, yeah, let's go.
Weather officials, by the way, say dangerous conditions overnight tonight could bring wind and high waves up to 10 feet. Coming up, prisons for profit. A shocking look at how private prisons are thriving across America.
Having sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Welcome back, everyone. You're watching the CBN News Channel. America is a nation of criminals, and locking up the largest prison population in the world, well, it comes with a hefty price tag. But guess what? For some corporations, it's a major money-making enterprise. Private prisons have been thriving, raking in cash to put people in cages. But as Jennifer Wishon reports, these prison for profit are now falling out of favor.
Private prisons have been around for decades. They promote themselves as cost-effective community partners, primed to save taxpayer dollars. But critics say that's because they cut corners, creating unsafe conditions.
It's big business. Major private prison companies are even publicly traded, and last year raked in billions of profits. According to the Sentencing Project, they operate in 29 states, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons relies on them too. John Pfaff, professor at Fordham Law School and author of Locked In, The True Causes of Mass Incarceration and How to Achieve Real Reform, says even though private prisons only house about 9% of the total prison population, they grab the most attention.
I think people feel like there's something distinctly morally repugnant about paying cash to put people in cages.
They get paid for each inmate locked up in their facilities. In 2012, Corrections Corporation of America, now known as CoreCivic, offered a shocking deal. The company would purchase prisons in 48 states if the states would guarantee a 90% occupancy rate.
I'm not saying corporations are evil, but corporations exist for one thing: to make money, maximum profit. That's okay if you're making widgets or toothpaste, but when you're dealing with people and you're making money off of prison, you're starting to treat people like they're toothpaste.
Jesus Cardenas was locked up for check fraud. He served part of his time in a state prison before being transferred to a private one, and says he immediately noticed a difference in the level of security.
They were just going through the motions. These officers that were there were just drawing a paycheck.
He says fights like this one at a private correction center in Idaho were a daily occurrence. And unless someone was severely hurt, he says they went unnoticed. ICE also contracts with private facilities. In a federal lawsuit filed last month, a Mexican woman says within hours of being deported, she and 2 other women were taken from their dorms and raped by officials at a facility run by CoreCivic in Houston. Criminologist Fran Buntman says when a government detains or sentences someone, it has an obligation to see it through.
We've taken away their liberty rights to control their own lives. We as a society and the government as the institution looking after them actually have a responsibility to their welfare. We as a society cannot subcontract out that responsibility to a private agency.
Incarceration is a big ticket item. States spend $50 billion a year. And all said, when you factor in police and prosecutors, it costs a total of $200 billion tax dollars to round up, prosecute, and keep inmates behind bars. Over the last year, activists successfully waged campaigns to squeeze private prisons financially, pressuring half a dozen major banks to cut off their financing. Investors pulled back too, and that could keep the companies from growing. Professor Pfaff says some private prisons do operate better than others, just like those in the public system, and points out state-owned prisons also have incentives to keep their doors open. It's just less transparent. No matter where inmates serve time, he encourages Americans to focus on the power of redemption.
Jesus never wrote anybody off, right? You know, that very last moment, he didn't care what the person next to him on the cross was up there for. And I think that there's a very important lesson in what he didn't say and what he didn't ask about how we should view, even those who have done amongst the worst things possible, that we should never just throw them away.
During the last decade, the overall prison rate has fallen by 15%, but America still locks up more people than any other country, and private prisons appear here to stay, at least for now. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the Home Front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regents award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
Welcome back to the CBN News Channel. During the COVID shutdown, many people downloaded and binge-watched an 8-episode series called The Chosen, about the life of Christ. Here's a look at the behind the scenes of this very unique production.
Are you the Messiah? Are you the Messiah?
No, I'm not.
Bible characters and stories come to life in the streaming series The Chosen, with Dallas Jenkins in the writer and director's chair.
How do we arrive at the name The Chosen?
Three things, actually. We look at and have used the term for Christ as the chosen one. So it refers to Christ in many ways. The Jews are God's chosen people, even as an evangelical, I believe that. And the people that Christ chose to follow him and to be in his team, as we like to say, it's a little bit of a nod to that.
He performs miracles and seeks no credit. What does he look like? Is he a member of Sanhedrin? Would you at least know him if you saw him again?
You might say telling Bible stories is in Dallas's blood. His father is co-author of the popular Left Behind book series.
How would you say doing a series about the life of Christ is different than the films we've seen on the Bible, the resurrection of Christ? How's it different?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you do a movie about the life of Christ, you've got 90 to 120 minutes to try to cover quite a lot of ground. And so oftentimes it goes from miracle to miracle, Bible story to Bible story. Jesus is typically the main character. And so you're just seeing things through his eyes, and you're encountering these people for a very brief amount of time. In a show, a multi-season show, the kinds of shows that we binge watch usually together as families, we're able to really explore in depth these people.
Put that down for a catch. A little farther out.
I don't have a quarrel with you, teacher. We've been doing this all night. Nothing.
Seen here with Peter in The Miracle of the Fish, Jonathan Rumi is a familiar face in the leading role.
Grab it!
What is it like to play the role of Jesus Christ?
It's life-changing in a couple of words. It's something that I've been doing now for about 6 years. It's humbling, it's overwhelming, it's inspiring, it's faith-inducing, faith-strengthening. Yeah, it's kind of indescribable.
How is this particular series different for you? What's special about it?
It's different in that we're getting to see sides of Jesus' ministry that's never been depicted on film before.
On the day of our visit to the set of The Chosen, preparation is being made to shoot a pivotal scene just beyond that wall, the wedding at Cana, where Jesus performed his very first miracle.
They have no idea who sits before them. To be a child again, yes?
We're exploring what it's like to be at a first-century wedding, what it might have been like to have Jesus as a guest at a wedding. It's a very joyous occasion, and again, one that I can scarcely recollect ever having seen put to film before. We're getting access to a humanity that people often, I think, forget. He felt the things that we feel. He experienced loss and sadness and frustration and happiness and joy and all those things, temptation, but without, conceding to that.
The role intimidating in any way?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Anybody that says otherwise either is not familiar with who Christ is or was and will be, or they're letting their ego answer that question.
How do you prepare?
I pray a lot. I read. I go to church. Mostly through prayer.
I did not come to deliver the people from Rome. And from what? From sin. From spiritual death. God loves the world in this way. That he gave his only son.
God began answering prayers for this series even before production began.
Lock it up! Lock it up!
The Chosen is the #1 crowd-funded media project of all time, with donations of more than $10 million.
What's it like to take the pages of Scripture and bring them to life? I can't imagine the feeling of reading the pages and then seeing what we get to see.
Yeah, that's really cool how you just phrased it, bringing them to life and then seeing them. That's how I feel, even though I'm the one who's doing it. I'm the director, and I'm the one who's literally writing the words and seeing them come to life, and I'm even dictating how they come to life, and yet I still feel like I'm following along, and I'm just listening.
God did not send his son into the world to condemn it, Nicodemus. He sent him to save it through him. It's as simple as Moses'...
That's pretty cool. You can watch more tonight on Studio 5 at 9:30 Eastern, right here on the CBN News Channel. Folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
No Super Falls, man. Come with...
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Welcome back to the show. A 103-year-old doctor in Belgium is trying to raise money for research on a coronavirus cure in a very unique way. Alphonse Lempols is walking 10 laps around his garden every day, which is equal to just under a mile a day. His goal, to walk the length of a marathon. He says he was inspired by Tom Moore, the World War II veteran, who raised millions for Britain's National Healthcare Service by walking laps in the gardens. Well, folks, that's it for this broadcast. Have a great week.